opened up to where we could address this on somewhat of a quarterly issue and see where we're going on the hospital billings and so forth. The sheriff's office would be very much a part of that. However, you're the controlling authority that gives us the money to do so. And so if your answer is that you're not going to pay, then there's no sense to have the quarterly meetings or any meetings. But if there is going to be some money available, I think that we could work out a deal with the hospitals and some kind of resolution to this matter to where we do get the quality of service that we're going to get no matter what, but the hospitals and their employees are going to be at least paid something for what they give us. So thank you.
One of the concerns I had is Norm mentioned that some of these bills go back as much as 5 years in arrears. So if we do come up with an agreement, we want to make sure that that's cleaned up at the same time. We don't want to come up with an agreement and then all of a sudden get submitted with 5 years worth of back bills. I mean, so if it's the pleasure of the board, if we want to, I guess, go back and renegotiate or whatever, that has to be part of the equation to where these back billings gets to be either waived or cleaned up or agreed on a percentage of payment or something, because it's not acceptable to have 5 years worth of bills hanging out there.
Am I on? Okay.
Yeah.
I believe at this current time that we just have, that we're current as of June 30th, 2008.
Oh, because you mentioned some years about 5 years of back bills.
Oh, not that I recall.
Okay. Supervisor Smith?
Well, I think that this is a perfect example and yet another one that we have dealt with unfortunately increasing frequency of how the lack of a national healthcare system pits local entity against local entity. And it's really tragic and really unfortunate, and I hope in the coming years we absolutely have to get a national solution to this. I mean, the fact that we're also very concerned about $41,000. I mean, it isn't a lot of money in the healthcare world. When we just talked about the item Supervisor McCowan brought forward from the consent calendar, about a $4.5 million package for pharmaceutical services for a 3-year contract. So, I mean, 41,000 isn't very much, but it's illustrative of the difficult economic times that we all have to absolutely pay attention to 41,000. So I don't know what the answer is, but I mean, yet again, this is how the healthcare industry has makes us not work, for each other, with each other, and see that we're part of one healthcare solution. So, you've got the same issue with Medicare vying to not pay, so the VA pays. I mean, and the amount of money, it is so counterproductive. The fact that we're spending all of this time, if you added up all the money we're spending, just literally that we're all taking part in this discussion, it shows how short-sighted this country has been and where this has taken us, that we don't have a national health care policy. So, I think it's important you're bringing this to us. We absolutely need to be fiscally accountable on every level. And, I'm certainly not opposed to a discussion, but I mean, delineating, which is what I think you're asking for with respect to direction, is who is really ultimately responsible is our challenge here. And I think it's tragic. And so I hope that because I don't think ultimately having these discussions around these small amounts of money are ever going to get us anywhere to really solving the problem. So just a little commentary.
Supervisor McCown?
Well, unfortunately, there is no money. That's the problem that we face. And yet, I don't think that projected out over a year, the annual cost, which may be $160,000 or more, is pretty significant. But I also believe that I hear Sheriff Allman, that you are saying that the good working relationship with the hospital is something that you certainly value, and I think I hear you saying that you believe it'd be worth trying to work out an agreement, maybe at a reduced rate. The hospital continues to be paid something, and that maybe facilitates the ongoing good working relationship. Is that a fair interpretation?
Supervisor McCowan, it is, and I don't want to once again, I will once again remind the board and the audience what a good situation we have in Mendocino County with 3 hospitals, with 3 emergency rooms, and all 3 hospitals are absolute team players. And when we met with the hospital administrators to discuss this, no one threw up their hands and say, well, you guys don't want to pay us anything, we're out of here. They all said, well, what can we do to work this out? And so I think that there's a very good opportunity to work out a solution, but you as a board are charged with the responsibility of the fiduciary responsibility of the taxpayers' money. And the courts have said that the truth is nobody from government has to pay these bills. It's very plain. The courts have said this, and as a matter of fact, some counties for years have refused to pay any of these bills in the southern part of the state. And we have realized the importance of maintaining the good working relationships with the hospitals and with the ambulances and with the helicopters and so forth. But now we're in a situation where we're told what the law is, and I, as sheriff, can't say, well, we're going to either keep paying or we're going to stop paying when it affects the entire county as a whole. And so that's why we're bringing it to you for this decision. We'll abide by whatever decision you come to, obviously, because you're the one who approves the budget. And any money that will be paid to the hospitals is going to have to come out of the budget as planned. And so maybe next year at the budget hearings, we're going to have to be in a situation where we're going to say, we've reached a time limit, and we're going to have an agreement with the hospitals in the county, and we know with a good certainty how much money it is going to affect the taxpayers. So that's where we are. It's for lack of better words, the ball's in your court. How do you want us to play with this one? Do you want us to maintain the relationship with the 35% or the 43, as Norm Thurston said, or the 35 as a hospital said, or with 0?
Well, and of course, currently the funds are in your budget. Is that, or am I mistaken on that?
In the 08-09 budget, there were monies appropriated for medical expenses, yes.
Mm-hmm. So potentially, it's your budget that might get impacted if we continue to pay the hospital. That might be something else that gets squeezed on your end, potentially.
Something else that's squeezed, yes. But yeah, of course. But we're going to be as reasonable team players as the hospitals are. And I think we can all, including the CEO's office, sit down and come up to an agreement that we'd be happy to bring back to you and say, how does this work for you?
And then just to clarify, we currently, or at least back in the 1980s, we had contracts with all of the hospitals, and I would imagine those contracts have probably lapsed or expired, and yet we've all been operating under the same provisions of those contracts up till the present time. So based on performance, I think there's been an expectation by the hospitals that they, at least up till now, would get reimbursed according to the rate that we had been paying. And does that rate cover all the services for all of the hospital personnel or the doctors, or is that different?
Yeah, if I could clarify, the rate, the 43% rate that I came up with is an average of all bills. The 3 large hospitals, we pay 35%. For Fort Bragg and Willits, Howard Memorial, their bills, the hospital bills, include the physicians. For Ukiah Valley Medical Center, the physicians bill separately, and we pay them at a rate of 75%. And then other providers, those are the main ones that we pay. But there are occasional other providers, and if they're very small amounts, $20 or $30, we often just pay them at 100%. If it's a larger amount, I'll usually try and contact the provider and negotiate a lower payment, and oftentimes they're agreeable with that. So the 35% is what we actually pay the 3 hospitals. The 43% is an average of what we pay all providers.
Right. But the court case clarifies that we're actually